Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. The world has been waiting, and if you haven't heard yet, big news out of Windsor today. Baby Sussex is here, and it's a healthy baby boy. So I want to go to sound from the very proud father.
I'm very excited to announce that Megan and myself had a baby boy early this morning, a very healthy boy. Mother and baby are doing incredibly well. It's been the most amazing experience I could ever possibly imagine. How any woman does what they do is beyond comprehension, but we're both absolutely thrilled and so grateful to all the love and support for everybody out there, from everybody out there. It's been amazing. So we just wanted to share this with everybody.
Yes, we are very excited for the Duke and Duchess there. I want to go to Will Reeve, who's in Windsor and who's been there for a very long time on Royal Baby Watch. Will, just give us an idea of all of the excitement going on today.
Oh, it's become complete madness here in the past couple hours. Once word got out that Meghan was in labor, and then almost immediately after that, via Instagram and then an official statement from the palace, the baby is here. It's a boy born early this morning at about 5:26 a.m. The town crier just over my shoulder here, that's what that madness is. If you can see it, he and generations of town criers before him are responsible for sort of the ceremonial announcement of the birth. He rings a bell, he yells very loud, and it's quite enjoyable, and everyone's very excited. But everyone's very excited on the street here as they just celebrate the birth of this baby boy, 7 pounds 3 ounces. Don't know where the baby was born, but we are happy to report that mom and baby are happy and healthy.
That is awesome. And so now that Royal Baby Watch is over, so to speak, what are you going to be doing now?
Well, there's a pub just down the way called the Prince Harry. They named it that last year. After 500 years of being named the 3 Tons, they changed it over to the Prince Harry. I think I'm going to go there and have a pint of a special beer that they made for this occasion, the Windsor and Eaton Brewery debuting the Windsor Baby. I'm going to have one of those, and then we'll wait and see what the boy is named.
Very cool. Will, I hope you enjoy it. And of course, we'll probably come back to you if there's any more updates. But thank you so much. Enjoy your time in Windsor. All right, guys, we're moving on to a pretty tragic story, sharp turn here that's in Moscow. 41 people were killed after a Russian airliner erupted in flames in an emergency landing. So I want to go to Dan Harris, who's on the ground there. Dan?
Kimberly, good morning from Sheremetyevo Airport here in Moscow, where behind the scenes there is an urgent investigation underway into what caused this awful and lethal crash. This morning, horrifying video of an Aeroflot Superjet carrying nearly 80 people on board, careening down the runway during an emergency landing, trailing a massive plume of raging flames and thick black smoke. As we come on the air this morning, 41 dead, 1 American reportedly among them. Surveillance video appears to show the jet bouncing off the ground as it tries to land. Moments later, flames ignite and that trail of fire lighting up the runway. On board, passengers watch in horror as one of the wings is torn apart. The plane dragging the fire across the tarmac as it finally comes to a halt. The survivors barely managing to escape on an exit slide just feet from the flames, frantically moving to safety as the fire sends a thick cloud of black smoke into the air. The plane was traveling from Moscow to the northern city of Murmansk, but was forced to turn back due to quote-unquote technical reasons. Some reports say it was a lightning strike. The aircraft then attempted an emergency landing at Sheremetyevo Airport, at which point it caught fire. Investigators now say they are focused on 3 possible contributing factors: the pilots, the ground crew, and air traffic controllers. The Superjet 100 is a commonly used passenger jet here in Russia, but is shunned by American and European airlines due to parts issues. In 2012, the same model crashed during a promotional flight in Indonesia, killing everyone on board. Back here in Moscow, news that is making this whole story even more horrifying. There were 3 children on board. We have now learned at least one of whom has died. Meanwhile, we're also hearing now from one of the flight attendants. She called into Russian TV, and she seems to indicate that the incident that set off this whole disaster shortly after the plane took off was indeed a lightning strike. Kimberly, back to you.
All right, Dan, absolutely horrifying to see those images. All right, guys, and the day has come for President Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. He begins serving his 3-year prison sentence for crimes including campaign finance violations related to hush money paid on Trump's behalf. So I want to go to Tom Yamas, who's in New York, with more. Tom, can you just give us the latest?
Good morning, Kimberly. Just behind me, Michael Cohen emerged about an hour ago. This is where he lives, the Trump Park Avenue apartment. It's somewhat sadly ironic. This door it's gilded with gold, and then it has a Trump crest on it. He walked out and took some questions. He didn't answer any of those questions, but he delivered a short statement. Here it is.
My family and friends that the country will be in a place without xenophobia, injustice, and lies at the helm of our country. There still remains much to be told, and I look forward to the day that I can share the truth. And thank you all very much.
So I asked Michael Cohen if he had a message to the president, a message for his family, or if he thinks people should feel sorry for him. He ignored all those questions, got into that waiting SUV, and now he's driving 2 hours north upstate to Otisville, where he'll be in a federal prison along with people like The Situation, Mike Sorrentino from the Jersey Shore, and Billy McFarland, who is the creator of the Fire Festival. He's in there for fraud charges. Now, Cohen, sort of teased that he had more to say, but he didn't say that, and he had been trying to play the role of whistleblower with prosecutors here in the Southern District. He was trying to get a reduced sentence, but prosecutors weren't interested. That being said, Kimberly, he did play a major role in the Muller report, cooperating with that investigation. And of course, he's going to prison for pleading guilty to tax evasion, to lying to a bank, and to campaign finance violations that were in coordination with those payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal during the campaign, which he sort of brokered. He said he was acting, though, from directions from President Trump. President Trump, on his part, has said he has done nothing wrong. Kimberly?
All right, Tom, thank you so much for those updates. We appreciate that. And we move on to Washington. Trump now saying that Bob Mueller should not testify before Congress, when he previously said he would leave the decision to Attorney General Barr. So he's flipped the script. I want to go to Karen Travers at the White House. Karen, why the change of heart?
Well, the president says that Democrats shouldn't get what he calls a redo. In the president's mind, Kimberly, the investigation is over. Robert Mueller's team took 2 years and then released that report, and now Americans can read the report, and the president says that's it. It's time to move on. On Friday, he was asked if Mueller should testify before Congress, and he said, "I don't know," and punted, as you say, to the Attorney General. Yesterday, though, very explicit tweet from the president, crystal clear, saying Bob Mueller should not testify. Now, of course, the president has claimed that the Mueller report was a complete and total exoneration. He says there was no collusion and no obstruction. Kimberly, Democrats say then if that is the case, why does he not want Mueller to go forward and take questions? They are certainly going to keep pushing on this. Negotiations continue. They'd like to see Robert Mueller sometime this month come up and take questions from lawmakers.
Yeah, and I want to ask you a couple more things that are concerning President Trump. Where we're going to see Tiger Woods being awarded the Medal of Freedom later. A little bit of a controversy there, yes?
There is. I think this is one that you can't make too big of a controversy about. The president's going to award the Presidential Medal of Freedom to his good friend, Tiger Woods. The president said that this is because of his accomplishments in the sport of golf and also his comeback in sports and in life. This is the highest honor you can give to a civilian in this country, and it's completely at the discretion of the president and the White House. And if you look back at who this president has given it to, you've got Elvis Presley, Babe Ruth posthumously, to NFL quarterbacks, and even previous presidents. Kimberly, they're almost a list of people who've done really cool and impressive things here in this country in sports, in arts, humanitarian efforts. It's up to the president. He can do whatever he wants with this. Tiger Woods is a good friend of his. They even golfed just a couple of months ago down at one of the president's courses in Florida.
All right, Karen, thank you so much. We appreciate that. And in a surprise announcement late last night, the United States said it's deploying an aircraft carrier strike group and a bomber task force to the Middle East on short notice. This comes in response to clear indications that Iran was planning an attack on U.S. forces in the region. I want to go to Martha Raddatz, who's in our D.C. bureau, with more. Martha, I just want you to explain what the clear indications were.
Well, it's hard to explain what those clear indications were because they're not telling us exactly what those clear indications were. They just say it is because of a possible attack by Iran or Iranian proxies, either on land or on sea. And beyond that, we do not have much information. But we heard Secretary of State Mike Pompeo say last night this has been in the works for a while. Another U.S. official told us it doesn't appear this threat is imminent. But look at those pictures of the bombers, the aircraft carrier. That means about 7,500 military personnel will be in that region. This is basically a show of force, a deterrence, if you will, having that carrier strike group there in the region.
Yeah, and obviously, as you're saying, it sends a message. What do you think the people of Iran think when they see all of these planes arriving?
Well, you know, I've been to Iran numerous times, and they really do keep track of the news. They keep track of what the United States is doing and how we move our forces in and out. I think the people of Iran are oftentimes very different than the Iranian leadership. So I think there is some concern. I think there's always concern that there will be a mistake, that something will happen in the Strait of Hormuz, because there's been a lot of tension, obviously, between Iran and the U.S. of late. And the biggest fear is that something will go wrong that they didn't intend to go wrong.
Yeah, and just curious, how long do the carriers stay in place?
Well, that all depends on what the U.S. feels the threat level is there. If that disappears, if we learn more about whether this was an actual threat or some sort of urgent move into that region, it'll stay there probably quite a while, but I suspect not much more than a few months.
All right, Martha, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate that. And more overseas, a ceasefire seems to have ended a deadly weekend between Israel and Gaza in what was the bloodiest fighting since a 2014 war. It left 23 dead in Gaza this weekend, and 4 were left dead in Israel. So I want to go to Jordana Miller, who's in Jerusalem, with the updates. Jordana?
Kimberly, quiet has returned to the Gaza Strip. Israel and Hamas quietly agreeing behind closed doors to a ceasefire, and it is holding. That all negotiated by the UN and Egypt, once again bringing both sides, pulling them back from the brink of a wider escalation. Now, this will put an end to one of the most violent and intense outbursts of aggression that we have seen between Israel and Hamas since the 2014 Gaza war. In just a 40-hour period, more than 650 militant mortars and rockets rained down on southern Israel, putting more than 1 million Israelis in danger, many running to their shelters, some actually sleeping in their bomb shelters and safe rooms. In the end, 4 Israelis were killed. On the other side, the Israeli army carrying out widespread airstrikes throughout the Gaza Strip. The IDF says it hit 350 Hamas and Islamic Jihad targets. Some of those were military bases, cross-border tunnels, but some were 3-, 4-, and 5-story buildings that came down. Buildings the army says were used for Hamas military operations. Israel also carrying out a tactic it hasn't used in a long time, assassinating one of Hamas's operatives. That is something we may see more in the future, but it's something that hasn't been done for many years. In the end, 23 Palestinians were killed, among them at least 1 pregnant woman and a child. Now, the Trump administration put out their support for Israel during this time. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that he stands behind Israel's right to defend itself. And now there is some quiet. But Israel's prime minister is coming under some criticism for being unable, after being in power now 10 years, to kind of get a handle over the security situation along the Gaza border. There has been more and more intermittent violence there, and many Israelis are now asking the prime minister to do more. Until many of the long-term kind of systemic issues are solved in the Gaza Strip, many of them coming from the blockade that Israel and Egypt imposed there, we are going to likely see more of this in the future. Kimberly?
All right, Jordana, thank you so much. Guys, a new report is out that says, from the UN, the United Nations, saying 1 million species are facing extinction. It's pretty alarming. So I want to bring in Susan Casey Lefkowitz. She's Chief Program Officer at the National Resource Defense Council. Susan, thanks for joining us. I'm not even certain people knew that 8 million species exist, and now they're saying that 1 million are going to be extinct. What is the reason for this?
Thanks so much for having me. You know, the reason for this is that we've been putting our natural systems under a lot of pressure. Climate change puts them under pressure. Industrial development puts them under pressure. And we haven't been doing as good a job at caring and nurturing for the systems on which we all depend as we need to.
Yeah, and when you say we haven't been doing a good job, what are some of the things that are included in us not doing a good job?
Well, you know, it comes down to the fact that when we look across the world, we need to have much better conservation of the habitats, the homes for wildlife, and our natural systems like our freshwater ecosystems, our oceans, our forests. These things are important not just for themselves, but because they sustain us. They sustain human life as well.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how do scientists understand when a species is about to become extinct?
Well, there's several ways in which scientists can look at possible extinction. One is actual population counts of species, getting a sense of where the numbers are. And, you know, at a certain point, a species may reach a level where they can't really breed anymore, where there's not enough of them left to keep the species going. Another is to look at habitat destruction, such as climate change is causing, and have a sense of if that habitat doesn't exist, if things change too much for the species, they can predict that in the years to come, it's going to be harder and harder for that species to survive.
Can you just give us an idea of some of the species that are actually on the list? Because sometimes you think, okay, it's just you know, big animals that are about to become extinct. But when we're talking 1 million, it has to be a wide range of different types of life.
That's right. We're looking at everything from the smallest birds to the largest whales. Think about bees and butterflies that you see every day in your backyard, as well as thinking about wonderful, magnificent creatures like the elephants and giraffes.
Yeah, and so just finally, I mean, are there any solutions so we're not making more species extinct? I mean, this is 1 in 8, so what do we do?
The one piece of really good news in this report is that there are solutions. There are things that we know how to do. The question is, do we have the political will to do them? Part of it is conserving at least 30% of our land and our oceans by 2030, so that the habitats, the homes that creatures need, the natural systems that sustain us, that these can keep on existing well into the future.
All right. And Susan, before we go, I mean, what part of this report was the most surprising to you? Anything that stood out to you where you were pretty alarmed?
I think what really alarmed me the most was taking it as a whole. When you think about 1 million species, it really brings it home that we're the stewards of the earth. And species are critical when we think about the birds and the bees and the butterflies, and how everything is connected also to sustaining our food systems, to making sure that our water systems are healthy for us to drink, that our food systems are healthy for us to eat. I think we don't give enough weight often to how interconnected everything is.
All right. I appreciate that, Susan. Again, pretty disturbing, but good to know we have to start doing something. So Susan Casey Lefkowitz from the National Resource Defense Council, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate that. Guys, another flight scare in the U.S. Pilots of a chartered plane made a last-minute runway change before landing, and the plane ended up in a river. So I want to go to Victor Acondo, who has the updates. Victor?
Kimberly, investigators are still trying to get to that critical cockpit voice recorder as they try to determine a cause, but it's become a real challenge. And the issue is that it's located in the tail of the plane, which, as you can see behind me, it's still submerged. So they can't get in there until the plane is removed. And before they can do that, all the fuel needs to be taken out. We're now seeing some new images of passengers stranded on the wings of the plane in the middle of a storm. The harrowing moments caught on video just after that plane carrying 143 people overran a Jacksonville runway and slid into the river. Those on board the Boeing 737, chartered by the Department of Defense, carrying military and civilians from Guantanamo Bay, Cuba to the Naval Air Station in Jacksonville last Friday night, tell us the top of the aircraft cracked on impact, letting water inside. Video clearly shows the nose cone of the plane was torn off. Firefighters taking the passengers to shore, somehow everyone survived.
For the most part, it was another miracle. I don't know how we survived.
22 people were taken to hospitals, but everyone will be okay. NTSB investigators on scene all weekend trying to determine a cause. Seen here examining the ground marks made by the landing gear. The flight data recorder quickly recovered, but the critical cockpit voice recorder still in the tail of the plane, submerged. Weather is also being looked at as a possible contributing factor in this near tragedy.
Things could have turned out a lot worse than they did. I think God had his hand on that plane, and that's why I'm sitting here today.
There's no real timeline on when the plane might be removed. They're still looking at options. They might keep it here at the Naval Air Station or take it elsewhere. Kimberly?
Thank you, Victor. Yes, we are certainly glad that everyone is safe. We're going to turn to weather now. We're going to get a proper national forecast from Ginger Z. Ginger?
Kimberly, thank you. Sound like a broken record from last week, but we do have another couple of systems to watch for severe storms. Over the weekend, same deal. Look at these pictures. This is a tornado of the 20 reported tornadoes. Wilson, Texas, this one in the Panhandle. And you see it's so stunning and remarkable, but luckily it's out in the middle of a field. Same thing happening here in Tahoka in Texas. And just wanted to take you through who's going to see that type of image in the next couple of days, which you'll see in a moment. But first, Lincoln, Nebraska, a more populated spot that ended up having gusts upward of 105 miles per hour, ripping parts of buildings away. This type of damage is all possible in a couple of areas this week, so stay with me. Flash flood watches are up because the lows are going to move relatively slowly, kind of moving over the same regions, and you get 2 to 4 inches of rain very quickly, you can have flash flooding. So from Amarillo, say to Dodge City to Overland Park, Kansas, today. That's the threat today. But watch this thing expand as we get this low, slow moving, dragging that cold front across. And there's actually a really strong temperature gradient because by Thursday, there's even some snow in the northern Great Lakes. So you know that there's a lot of power in this. Wednesday, Oklahoma City to Dallas-Fort Worth is included in the enhanced risk. And then by Thursday, we're talking about Indianapolis, Toledo, down to, say, Jackson, Mississippi, all looking for damaging wind and tornado threat. But remember, it doesn't just come with that. It's with severe storms, you often get flash flooding. So you're going to see pictures like this that were happening in Wichita, Kansas. This only took 2 to 3 inches. Some places had more than 5, but still, you get 2 to 3 inches within an hour. You can easily see flash flooding. All those cars were driving into water, which we know is a horrible idea. So see where those red bullseyes are? More than a half foot possible. Southern Arkansas, Louisiana back to Houston, and then right through the center of Kansas into Missouri. Finally, enough with the terrible thing. How about the good stuff that comes from the rain? This one in Utah, double rainbow images, had to share with you. So a little smile for your Monday, Kimberly.
Thank you, Ginger. We appreciate that. Always need a good smile. All right. Did you guys watch Game of Thrones last night? If you did, then you know people aren't talking about the episode. They're talking about a cup, okay? The social media is exploding after it looks like there was a Starbucks cup that was left on set. Yep, right there. How in the world is that possible? You be the judge. We have no word from the show's producers on whether this was intentional or by accident, but pretty funny. All right, my guy, everyone, continue to take care of yourself. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. And then you can check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines and, of course, the royal baby news, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you tomorrow.